Is there a short slogan, you ask, that will help me keep on track? I use the acronym WELCOME because when I look back at regaining my serenity, I see that I welcomed 7 actions into my life. Actions that take into account physical, emotional, and spiritual needs. Welcome to serenity. W-E-L-C-O-M-E. W, walk. E, express yourself. L, love your neighbor as you. C, confess wrongdoing to your victim. O, offer forgiveness. M, make smiles. E, I, others. W, walk. Taking a half-hour daily walk has been shown in many studies to equal or surpass the effect of antidepressant drugs. I find I sleep better when I take my half-hour walk, sometimes just a little longer, just before or after the last meal of the day. Fred Allen said, I like long walks, especially when taken by people who annoy me. E, express yourself. In the hospital, my shrink said to me, Murray, you don't want to rock the boat, but you've got to learn to stand up and speak up for yourself. Part of depression is anger turned inward because it wasn't turned outward. Expression, or pressing out, is the opposite of depression, or pressing down. But anger will express itself somewhere, either through your vocal cords, or through the vertebrae in your lower spine, or somewhere worse. Woody Allen said, I don't verbalize easily. I grow a tumor instead. L, love your neighbor as yourself. I believe these words of Jesus mean just what they say. Love your neighbor as yourself, not as someone else. It's identifying who my neighbor is. In his book, The 5 People You Meet in Heaven, Mitch Albom says, you can no more separate one person from another than you can separate a breeze from the wind. Jesus said, you have heard it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies. Why? Because my so-called enemy is a facsimile, a carbon copy of me. Below the outer physical differences, in the words of Jesus to the unbelieving Pharisees, the kingdom of God is within you. And the God of that sacred spiritual kingdom is one and undivided, the true light which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. Happiness comes from humbly adjusting to reality, to what is, and overriding oneness among us all. In his story of the Good Samaritan, Jesus changes the lawyer's question at the beginning, who is my neighbor, at the end to, and who was neighbor unto him? Object becomes subject. Categories disappear and become one. The Samaritan sees himself, the victim in the ditch. If we're not all joined together, then why do I feel rotten when I've done somebody a bad turn? And good when I've helped? As simple a thing as giving directions to someone lost on the road. Emerson said, when I put a chain around my neighbor's neck, the other end fastens itself around my own. C, confess wrongdoing to your victim and try to make restitution. This erases my self-anger of guilt over what I did to them. Is it even possible to have mental health restored if we don't deal with guilt? Cancer specialist Bernie Siegel talked about giving a talk on self-healing. One of the gloomy patients said, I suppose for that you've got to have a clear conscience. Siegel said, you do have to have a clear conscience. And when you've done the work necessary to clear your conscience, the joy of living returns. And the physiology of optimism restores you. The physical changes are the side effects, he said, of an altered life. And the letter O, offer forgiveness. Besides going to those I've hurt and asking forgiveness, I doubt the human mind even could believe oneself forgiven if one were not also regularly forgiving others. For that would be a contradiction, something the mind can't hold. As Science and First Officer Spock on the USS Enterprise would say, it doesn't compute. Faith without works is dead. M, make smiles. They found that putting a smile on your face, even when you're feeling down, especially when you're feeling down, will reconnect you to happier moments. Because the brain takes what's on your face, well, at face value, and sends that signal through all the cells in your body. G.K. Chesterton said, angels can fly because they take themselves lightly. E, I, others. Because when I focus on helping others, I get my eyes off myself. Hindu scholar and writer Swami Satchidananda says, the greatest joy in life is doing something for somebody else. Don't think you get joy by doing this. The joy is in you always. Your actions allow you to retain the supreme joy. But you may ask, how do you teach an old dog new tricks? How do I get rid of my self-attention? When you take your car to get lubricated, do they worry how they'll get rid of the old grease? No, it's the injection of the new grease that results in the ejection of the old. So with depression. Simply put your attention on helping others, and your self-attention will gradually diminish automatically. That's W-E-L-C-O-M-E. Welcome to serenity. The antidepressant lifestyle is a way of seeing the world that enables me to do something about my world. For when I change, my world changes. A woman went to her doctor complaining about seeing spots in front of her eyes. The doctor said, have you ever seen an ophthalmologist? She said, no, just spots. But you ask, must I pay attention to the needs of others for the rest of my life? Could we take a page from AA and deal with this illness one day at a time? Do one good deed today to one individual having a harder time than ourselves, and deal with tomorrow? In the film My Name is Bill W., starring James Wood and James Garner, James Garner's character, Dr. Bob, a depressed alcoholic, says, I've been prayed over and carved up more than a Christmas turkey. So what do you think you can do for me? James Wood's character, Bill W., one-time hopeless drunk, later called by Time magazine one of the 100 most influential men of the 20th century, replies, I didn't come here to help you, I've come here to help me. We help ourselves by helping others. If we got a midterm in the School of Life, would we be making the grade? I like the way Marianne Evans sets up the report card standards. If we sit down at set of sun and count the deeds that we have done, and counting find one word that eased the heart of him who heard, one glanced most kind, that felt like sunshine where it went, then you can count that day well spent. But if through all the livelong day you've cheered no heart by yea or nay, if through it all you've nothing done that you can trace, that brought the sunshine to one face, one act most small, that helped some soul, and nothing cost, then count that day as worse than lost. But huge changes are not required. Take a little thing like spelling in the church bulletin. On Saturday at 12, there will be a potluck, followed by prayer and medication. In the Q&A after a speech at Four Villages Community Health Centre in Toronto, a lady questioned my help myself approach. She said she'd served the needs of a particular family member for years with no gratitude or help in return, and that she's just as depressed as ever. Slavery was abolished in the British Empire in 1833. Whom ought I to be helping? Having confessed to my victims and forgiven those of whom I am victim, I can look around and see whether another's need and my interest or sympathy or talent overlap, and I can choose how to assist. Mothers sometimes tell me they can't help their teenagers who are depressed because they won't listen to them. I'll bet they will listen to World Wide Web mindyourmind.ca, an excellent site created, produced, and run by and for teenagers. That's mindyourmind.ca. As we approach the end, we've briefly scanned 3 therapies: pills, skills, and the will. The brain disease model, which sees chemical imbalance and prescribes drugs. The mind disease model, which sees incorrect thinking and prescribes talk therapy. The spiritual disease model, which sees self-absorption and prescribes loving your neighbor as yourself. Is depression even a wake-up call, calling us out of the selfish, passing life of what Jesus called the world, to identify instead with the selfless, never-ending life of God's world? In his novel, The Poet's Homecoming, George MacDonald says of Walter, who was badly depressed, "His misery is the wind of the waving garments of him who walks in the garden in the cool of the day." The region of a man's life is a spiritual region. God, his brothers, his neighbors all, is the wide world in which alone his spirit can find room. Himself is his dungeon. I don't know about you, but I couldn't pill pop my way back to peace of mind, or think or believe my way back. But I was able to act or conduct my way back when I fessed up to others, forgave others, and focused on helping others, or took some faltering steps in that direction. A work still in progress. Why all the emphasis on others? In Jane Wagner's play, The Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe, Lily Tomlin says, "Seems like there's some kind of cosmic crazy glue connecting everything to everything." William Bernard Ullathorne, the cabin boy who became Bishop of Birmingham, say that 3 times fast, said, "Sadness consists in a morbid concentration on one's self. But let the will make a little effort to be kind and considerate to another, and it is amazing how soon that malignant charm is broken." If you're on a drug you can handle, stay on it. If you're in talk therapy, remain. I gained many helpful insights in talk therapy. Simply add this positive interaction therapy, PIT for short, because it got me out of the pit. For there's nothing in this interaction model that excludes anything in the mind model. It simply goes farther. The great psychiatrist Alfred Adler said, "You can be healed if every day you start first thing in the morning to bring a real joy to someone else. Do this for 2 weeks," he said, "and you will no longer need therapy." We started with a quote from Mike Wallace of 60 Minutes. General Westmoreland had sued him and CBS for $120 million for libel over the 1982 documentary, The Uncounted Enemy, A Vietnam Deception. When it occurred to him that they could lose the case, Wallace said, "I thought, they're calling me a fraud and a liar? What will people say?" And he hit bottom, and he attempted suicide. After getting on an antidepressant drug and into talk therapy, and after another 20 years of productive work, he was asked his final advice. These are his last words in that interview. Being honest with yourself and honest with others, and finally, learning to be kind to other people. If a famous hard-hitting reporter can land in the dark dungeon of despair, who can escape it? According to Erasmus, a peer of Martin Luther, only fools. Why? Erasmus said, fools are free of melancholy because they are neither troubled in conscience nor macerated with cares. No guilt, no self-preoccupation. I don't know about you, whether you live up on Serenity Avenue or down in Depression Valley. I no longer live down in Depression Valley. When I got onto Kindness Boulevard, I ended up on Serenity Avenue. For Kindness Boulevard is really a huge circle that crosses every pleasant street. Back then, I detested the coming of morning, especially if the sun was shining. And I thought, if only sleep would last forever. Now morning comes like a faithful friend. Henry Van Dyke said, "He who seeks alone to save his soul may keep the path, but will not reach the goal. While he who walks in love may wander far, yet God will bring him where the blessed are. Self is the only prison that can ever bind the soul. Love is the only angel that can bid the gates unroll. And when he comes to thee, arise and follow fast. His way may lie through darkness, but it comes to light at last." Easy?